ASMR video, and it's obviously a black screen video, but I'm going to read a story, and it's a long story with a lot of characters. There's like kings and murder and fighting over the throne and like hiding out for your life, and there's a lot of stories of friendship, and there's a lot of different characters. So I wanted to read a chapter, like I think chapter 26 or something, because I opened up the book and I started reading. But there's so many characters that I have to start from the beginning. So I think I'm going to start with some tapping and page flipping, and then I'll start reading. I'll do some scratching too. Okay, the author of this book is uncertain. Some people have suggested Samuel and the prophets Nathan and Gad. The date it's written is uncertain, but it's perhaps around 1000 BC. Here's the content of what's in this before I start reading the story. The choices some people make say a lot about their character. The book of 1 Samuel is full of choices, some good and some bad. The first significant choice in 1 Samuel is made by Hannah, a woman who was unable to have children. She chose to cry out to Ahiah for a child. God heard her prayer and granted her request. Grateful to God, Ahiah, for his goodness, Hannah dedicated her child, Samuel, to the Lord from the time he was born. So Samuel grew up among the priests at the tabernacle, and eventually he himself became the leading priest. Near the end of Samuel's life, the Israelites rejected Samuel's sons as judges over Israel and asked him to appoint a king over them. Samuel warned the Israelites that a king would oppress them, but they chose to have one anyway. Thus began the history of Israel's kings. Samuel anointed a tall, handsome man named Saul to be Israel's first king. At first, Saul appeared to make some good decisions, but soon he began to make some very bad choices, and God, Ahiah, brought an end to his reign. David, a shepherd from Bethlehem, was chosen to take Saul's place. Saul made several attempts on David's life, but by the end of the book, Saul and his son are dead, and David is in line to become the next king. The purpose of the book is to record the life of Israel's last judge, Samuel, the reign and decline of Israel's first king, Saul, and the selection and preparation of Israel's greatest king, David. Outline. This is like the outline of the whole entire book. And there's 5 sections. The first is Samuel's early ministry and the Philistine War. So this story actually gets into like history. A lot of people think that Philistines are Palestinian people, but you would have to look into that because that's a conversation for a different video. The second part is King Saul's early successes. The third part is Saul's decline and the rise of David. The fourth part is Saul's persecution of David. And the last section of the book is David's growing strength and the death of Saul. Chapter 1. I think I'm going to whisper part of this, if that's okay. There was a man named Elkanah who lived in Ramah in the hill country of Ephraim. He was the son of Jeroham and grandson of Elihu from the family of Tohu and the clan of Zoph. Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, while Hannah did not. Each year, Elkanah and his family would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice the Lord Almighty at the tabernacle. The priest of the Lord at that time were the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. On the day Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of the sacrifice to Peninnah and each of her children. But he gave Hannah a special portion because he loved her very much, even though the Lord had given her no children. But Peninnah made fun of Hannah because the Lord had closed her womb. Year after year was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle. Hannah would finally be reduced to tears and would not even eat. "What's the matter, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask. "Why aren't you eating? Why be so sad just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" If you have ever been a wife and not able to have children when you want them, that's hard to have your husband say that. But then to be a second wife, or to have your husband married to another person and his other wife is mocking you about it, that's crazy. Hannah's prayer for a son. This is verse 9. Once, when they were at Shiloh, Hannah went over to the tabernacle after supper to pray to the Lord. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord, and she made this vow: "O Lord Almighty, If you will look down upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. And as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut. Now, I'm going to interject again. I have been contemplating so much and so deeply about hair, and this is just one place in scripture where it mentions hair, because hair is a sacred thing. I went on a long journey discovering that hair is a sacred thing and really getting in depth and meaning. But for me personally, this is interesting, and it resonates, and it gives me more food for thought. And everything that I experience in my life, I can't say it boils down to hair, but it does, it has something to do with it, and I don't understand all of it, and that's one thing I like reading these stories for, is they give you some meat to chew on. Anyway, back to the sentence. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. And as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, Ahiah, his hair will never be cut. As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her, seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound. He thought she had been drinking. Must you come here drunk? He demanded. Throw away your wine. Oh, no, sir, she replied. I'm not drunk, but I am very sad. I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Please don't think I am a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow. In that case, Eli said, cheer up. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him. Oh, thank you, sir, she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. Samuel's birth and dedication. The entire family got up early the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. They returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her request, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, I asked the Lord for him. Samuel has an asterisk next to it, so I'm going to try to find that at the bottom of the page. This is verse 20. Samuel sounds like the Hebrew term for asked of God or heard by God. So she named him Samuel, and the asterisk says that Samuel sounds like the Hebrew word for asked of God or heard by God. Obviously, you can see why she would choose that name for her son that she asked God for. So she named him Samuel, for she said, I asked the Lord for him. The next year, Elkanah, Peninnah, and their children went on their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. But Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the baby is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise." So she stayed home and nursed the baby. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice, and half a bushel of flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they took the child to Eli. "Sir, do you remember me?" Hannah asked. "I am the woman who stood here several years ago, praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this child, and he has given me my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life." And they worshiped the Lord there. Now we're on to chapter 2. Hannah's prayer of praise. Then Hannah prayed, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. Oh, how the Lord has blessed me. Now I have an answer for my enemies, as I delight in your deliverance. No one is holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Stop acting so proud and haughty. Don't speak with such arrogance. The Lord is a God who knows your deeds, and he will judge you for what you have done. And those who were weak are now strong. Those who are well fed are now starving, and those who were starving are now full. The barren woman now has 7 children, but the woman with many children will have no more. The Lord brings both death and life. He brings some down to the grave, but raises others up. The Lord makes one poor and another rich. He brings one down and lifts another up. He lifts the poor from the dust, yes, from a pile of ashes. He treats them like princes, placing them in seats of honor. For all the earth is the Lord's, and he has set the world in order. He will protect his godly ones, but the wicked will perish in darkness. No one will succeed by strength alone. Those who fight against the Lord will be broken. He thunders against them from heaven. The Lord judges throughout the earth. He gives mighty strength to his kings. He increases the might of his anointed one. Then Elkanah and Hannah returned home to Ramah without Samuel. And the boy became the Lord's helper, for he assisted Eli the priest. Now the sons of Eli were scoundrels who had no respect for the Lord or for their duties as priests. Whenever anyone offered a sacrifice, Eli's sons would send over a servant with a 3-pronged fork. That reminds me of a pitchfork. While the meat of the sacrificed animal was still boiling, the servant would stick the fork into the pot and demand that whatever it brought up to be given to Eli's sons. Let me read that again. Eli's sons would send over a servant with a 3-pronged fork, while the meat of the sacrificed animal was still boiling, the servant would stick the fork into the pot and demand that whatever it brought up be given to Eli's sons. All the Israelites who came to worship at Shiloh were treated this way. Sometimes the servant would come even before the animal's fat had been burned on the altar. He would demand raw meat before it had been boiled so that it could be used for roasting. The man offering the sacrifice might reply, "Take as much as you want, but the fat must be burned. But the fat must first be burned." Then the servant would demand, "No, give it to me now, or I'll take it by force." So the sin of these young men was very serious in the Lord's sight, for they treated the Lord's offerings with contempt. Now Samuel, though only a boy, was the Lord's helper. He wore a linen tunic, just like that of a priest. Each year his mother made a small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. Before they returned home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord give you other children to take the place of this one she gave to the Lord." And the Lord gave Hannah 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Now Eli was very old, but he was aware of what his sons were doing to the people of Israel. He knew, for instance, that his sons were seducing the young women who assisted at the entrance of the tabernacle. Eli said to them, "I have been hearing reports from the people about the wicked things you are doing. Why do you keep sinning? You must stop, my sons. The reports I hear among the Lord's people are not good. If someone sins against another person, God can mediate for the guilty party. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede?" But Eli's sons wouldn't listen to their father, for the Lord was already planning to put them to death. The reason for that is because the wages of sin is death. Meanwhile, as young Samuel grew taller, he also continued to gain favor with the Lord and with the people. Now we're at chapter 2, verse 27. I'm gonna get a drink though. It's coffee and it's iced coffee. I'm sick, so this whole video I'm just trying not to cough. One day, a prophet came to Eli and gave him this message from the Lord. Okay. One day, a prophet came to Eli and gave him this message from the Lord. "Didn't I reveal myself to your ancestors when the people of Israel were slaves in Egypt? I chose your ancestor Aaron from among all his relatives to be my priest, to offer sacrifices on my altar, to burn incense, and to wear the priestly garments as he served me. And I assigned the sacrificial offerings to you priests. So why do you scorn my sacrifices and offerings? Why do you honor your sons more than me? For you and they have become fat from the best offerings of my people. Therefore, the Lord, the God of Israel, who is Ahia, I am that I am, says, the terrible things you are doing cannot continue. I had promised that your branch of the tribe of Levi, that's the Haitians, would always be my priests, but I will honor only those who honor me, and I will despise those who despise me. I will put an end to your family, and it will no longer serve as my priests. All the members of your family will die before their time. None will live to a ripe old age. You will watch with envy as I pour out prosperity on the people of Israel. But no members of your family will ever live out their days. Those who are left alive will live in sadness and grief, and their children will die a violent death. And to prove that what I have said will come true, I will cause your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, to die on the same day. Then I will rise up a faithful priest who will serve me and do what I tell him to do. I will bless his descendants, and his family will be priests to my anointed kings forever. Then all your descendants will bow before. I have to flip the page. Hold on a second. Then all your descendants will bow before his descendants, begging for money and food. Please, they will say, give us jobs among the priests so we will have enough to eat. Chapter 3. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel was serving the Lord by assisting Eli. Now, in those days, messages from the Lord were very rare, and visions were quite uncommon. One night Eli, who was almost blind by now, had just gone to bed. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was sleeping in the tabernacle near the ark of God. Suddenly the Lord called out, Samuel, Samuel. Yes, Samuel replied, what is it? He jumped up and ran to Eli. Here I am, what do you need? I didn't call you, Eli replied. Go on back to bed. So he did. Then the Lord called out again, Samuel. Again, Samuel jumped up and ran to Eli. Here I am, he said. What do you need? I didn't call you, my son, Eli said. Go on back to bed. Samuel did not yet know the Lord because he had never had a message from the Lord before. So now the Lord called a 3rd time. And once more Samuel jumped up and ran to Eli. Here I am, he said. What do you need? Then Eli realized it was the Lord who was calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, Go and lie down again, and if someone calls again, say, Yes, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went back to bed. And the Lord came and called as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel replied, Yes, your servant is listening. Then the Lord said to Samuel, I am about to do a shocking thing in Israel. I am going to carry out all my threats against Eli and his family. I have warned him continually that judgment is coming for his family because his sons are blaspheming God, Ahia, and he hasn't disciplined them. So I have vowed that the sins of Eli and his sons will never be forgiven by sacrifices or offerings. Samuel speaks for the Lord. Samuel stayed in bed until morning, then got up and opened the doors of the tabernacle as usual. He was afraid to tell Eli what the Lord had said to him, but Eli called out to him, Samuel, my son. Here I am, Samuel replied. What did the Lord say to you? Tell me everything. I'm getting tired. and may God punish you if you hide anything from me." So Samuel told Eli everything. He didn't hold anything back. "If it's the Lord's will," Eli replied, "let him do what he thinks best." As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and everything Samuel said was wise and helpful. All the people of Israel, from one end of the land to the other, knew that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh and gave messages to Samuel there at the tabernacle. And Samuel's words went out to all the people of Israel. Chapter 4. The Philistines capture the ark. Oh, this is so good. At that time, Israel was at war with the Philistines. The Israelite army was camped near Ebenezer, and the Philistines were at Aphek. The Philistines attacked and defeated the army of Israel, killing 4,000 men. After the battle was over, the army of Israel returned to their camp, and their leaders asked, "Why did the Lord allow us to be defeated by the Philistines?" Then they said, "Let's bring the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord from Shiloh. If we carry it into battle with us, it will save us from our enemies." So they sent men to Shiloh to bring back the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord Almighty, Ahiah, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of Eli, helped carry the Ark of God to where the battle was being fought. When the Israelites saw the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord coming into the camp, their shout of joy was so loud it made the ground shake. "What's going on?" the Philistines asked. "What's all the shouting about in the Hebrew camp?" When they were told it was because the Ark of the Lord had arrived, they panicked. "The gods have come into their camp," they cried. "This is a disaster. We have never had to face anything like this before. Who can save us from these mighty gods of Israel?" "They are the same gods who destroyed the Egyptians with plagues when Israel was in the wilderness. Fight as you never have before, Philistines. If you don't, we will become the Hebrew slaves, just as they have been ours." So the Philistines fought desperately, and Israel was defeated again. The slaughter was great. 30,000 Israelite men died that day. The survivors turned and fled to their tents, and the Ark of God was captured, and Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli, were killed. The death of Eli. We're at chapter 4, verse 12. And I'm going to take another sip of my drink. Let me know if you watch this, if you like the sound of this ice in my cup. I'll tap on it too. A man from the tribe of Benjamin ran from the battlefront and arrived at Shiloh later that same day. He had torn his clothes and put dust on his head to show his grief. Eli was waiting beside the road to hear the news of the battle, for his heart trembled for the safety of the Ark of God. When the messenger arrived and told what had happened, an outcry resounded throughout the town. "What is all the noise about?" Eli asked. The messenger rushed over to Eli, who was 98 years old and blind. He said to Eli, "I have just come from the battlefront. I was there this very day." "What happened?" Eli demanded. "Israel had been defeated," the messenger replied. me know if you like that noise too. That's a lid on my coffee cup. Okay, what happened? Eli demanded. Israel had been defeated, the messenger replied. Thousands of Israelite troops are dead on the battlefield. Your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were killed too, and the ark of God has been captured. When the messenger mentioned what had happened to the ark, Eli fell backward from his seat beside the gate. He broke his neck and died, for he was old and very fat. He had led Israel for 40 years. Eli's daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and near her time of delivery. When she heard that the ark of God had been captured and that her husband and father-in-law were dead, her labor pains suddenly began. She died in childbirth, but before she passed away, the midwives tried to encourage her. "Don't be afraid," they said, "you have a baby boy." But she did not answer or respond in any way. She named the child Ichabod. Where is the glory? Murmuring, Israel's glory is gone. Wow. Let me say that again. She named the child Ichabod. Where is the glory? Murmuring, Israel's glory is gone. She named him this because the ark of God had been captured, and because her husband and father-in-law were dead. Then she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." Chapter 5. The Ark in Philistia. After the Philistines captured the ark of God, they took it from the battleground at Ebenezer to the city of Ashdod. They carried the ark of God into the temple of Dagon and placed it beside the idol of Dagon. But when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it the next morning, Dagon had fallen with his face to the ground in front of the ark of the Lord. So they set up the idol again. But the next morning the same thing happened. The idol had fallen face down before the ark of the Lord again. This time, his head and hands had broken off and were lying in the doorway. Only the trunk of his body was left intact. That is why, to this day, neither the priests of Dagon nor anyone who enters the temple of Dagon will step on its threshold. Then the Lord began to afflict the people of Ashdod and the nearby villages with the plague of tumors. Tumors has an asterisk near it, so I'm going to read what the bottom of the page says. We are in verse 6. Okay, this is the Greek version. In Latin, Vulgate reads tumors. And rats appeared in their land, and death and destruction were throughout the city. I'll have to look into that in the concordance. Verse 7. When the people realized what was happening, they cried out, "We can't keep the ark of the God of Israel here any longer. He is against us. We will all be destroyed, along with our god Dagon." So they called together the rulers of the 5 Philistine cities and asked, "What should we do with the ark of the God of Israel?" The rulers discussed it and replied, "Move it to the city of Gath." So they moved the ark of the God of Israel to Gath. But when the ark arrived at Gath, the Lord began afflicting its people, young and old, with a plague of tumors, and there was a great panic. So they sent the ark of God to the city of Ekron. But when the people of Ekron saw it coming, they cried out, "They are bringing the ark of the God of Israel here to kill us too." The people summoned the rulers again and begged them, "Please send the ark of God, the ark of the God of Israel, back to its own country, or it will kill us all." For the plague from God had already begun, and the great fear was sweeping across the city. Those who didn't die were afflicted with tumors, and there was weeping everywhere. Okay, we're at chapter 6. I feel like I have to keep reading because it's so good. The ark of the Lord remained in Philistine territory 7 months in all. Then the Philistines called in the priests and diviners and asked them, "What should we do about the ark of the Lord? Tell us how to return it to its own land." "Send the ark of the God of Israel back, along with a gift," they were told. "Send a guilt offering so the plague will stop. Then, if the plague doesn't stop, you will know that God didn't send the plague after all." "What sort of guilt offering should we send?" they asked. They were told, "Since the plague has struck both you and your 5 rulers, make 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats, just like those that have ravaged your land. Make these things to show honor to the God of Israel. Perhaps then he will stop afflicting you, your gods, in your land. Don't be stubborn and rebellious, as Pharaoh and the Egyptians were. They wouldn't let Israel go until God had ravaged them with dreadful plagues. Now, build a new cart and find 2 cows that have just had calves. Make sure the cows have never been yoked to a cart. Hitch the cows to the cart, but shut their calves away from them in a pen, and put the ark of the Lord on the cart, and beside it place a chest containing the gold rats and gold tumors. Then let the cows go wherever they want. If they cross the border of our land and go to Beth Shemesh, we will know it was the Lord who brought this great disaster upon us. If they don't, we will know that the plague was simply a coincidence and was not sent by the Lord at all." So these instructions were carried out. 2 cows with newborn calves were hitched to the cart, and their calves were shut up in a pen. Then the ark of the Lord and the chest containing the gold rats and gold tumors were placed on the cart. Sure enough, the cows went straight along the road toward Beth Shemesh, lowing as they went. The Philistine rulers followed them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. The people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting wheat in the valley, and when they saw the ark, they were overjoyed. The cart came into the field of a man named Joshua, and stopped beside a large rock. So the people broke up the wood of the cart for a fire, and killed the cows and sacrificed them to the Lord as a burnt offering. Several men of the tribe of Levi lifted the ark of the Lord and the chest containing the gold rat and gold tumors from the cart, and placed them on a large rock. Many burnt offerings and sacrifices were offered to the Lord that day by the people of Beth Shemesh. The 5 Philistine rulers watched all this, and then returned to Ekron that same day. The 5 gold tumors that were sent by the Philistines as a guilt offering to the Lord were gifts from the rulers of Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. The 5 gold rats represented the 5 Philistine cities and their surrounding villages, which were controlled by the 5 rulers. The large rock at Beth Shemesh, where they set the ark of the Lord, still stands in the field of Joshua as a reminder of what happened there. The ark moved to Kiriath Jearim, but the Lord killed 70 men from Beth Shemesh because they looked into the ark of the Lord. And the people mourned greatly because of what the Lord had done. Who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? They cried out. Where can we send the ark from here? So they sent messengers to the people at Kiriath Jearim and told them, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Please come here and get it. Now we're in chapter 7. Let's see how long this is. Okay, I'll read chapter 7. So the men of Kiriath Jearim came to get the ark of the Lord. They took it to the hillside home of Abinadab and ordained Eleazar, his son, to be in charge of it. The ark remained in Kiriath Jearim for a long time, 20 years in all. During that time, all Israel mourned because it seemed that the Lord had abandoned them. Samuel leads Israel to victory. We're in verse 3 of chapter 7. Then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you are really serious about wanting to return to the Lord, get rid of your foreign gods and your images of Ashtaroth. Determine to obey only the Lord, then he will rescue you from the Philistines. So the Israelites destroyed their images of Baal, and Ashtaroth and worshipped only the Lord. Then Samuel told them, come to Mizpah, all of you. I will pray to the Lord for you. So he gathered there, and in a great ceremony drew water from a well and poured it out before the Lord. They also went without food all day and confessed that they had sinned against the Lord. So it was at Mizpah that Samuel became Israel's judge. When the Philistine rulers heard that all Israel gathered at Mizpah, they mobilized their army and advanced. The Israelites were badly frightened when they learned that the Philistines were approaching. Plead with the Lord our God to save us from the Philistines, they begged Samuel. So Samuel took a young lamb and offered it to the Lord as a whole burnt offering. He pleaded with the Lord to help Israel, and the Lord answered. Just as Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines arrived for battle. But the Lord spoke with a mighty voice of thunder from heaven, and the Philistines were thrown into such confusion that the Israelites defeated them. The men of Israel chased them from Mizpah to Beth-kar, slaughtering them all along the way. Samuel then took a large stone and placed it between the towns of Mizpah and Jeshanah. He named it Ebenezer, the stone of help, for he said, up to this point the Lord has helped us. So the Philistines were subdued and didn't invade Israel again for a long time. And throughout Samuel's lifetime, the Lord's powerful hand was raised against the Philistines. The Israelite towns near Ekron and Gath that the Philistines had captured were restored to Israel, along with the rest of the territory that the Philistines had taken. And there was also peace between Israel and the Amorites in those days. Samuel continued as Israel's judge for the rest of his life. Each year he traveled around, setting up his court first at Bethel, then at Gilgal, then at Mizpah. He judged the people of Israel at each of those places. Then he would return to his home at Ramah, and he would hear cases there too. And Samuel built an altar to the Lord at Ramah. Now we're in chapter 8, and I'm going to stop reading because it's my bedtime. But let me know if you watch this video, if you like whispering better, or if you like soft speaking better. Right now I'm sick with a cough still. I'm recovering. I don't want to say I'm sick anymore, but I have a raspy voice. And so I can't, sometimes when I talk softly, you can hear the raspiness in my voice, and I don't think that's really ASMR. But let me know if you like the tapping and if you like the page flipping. And if you like the page turning. And kind of crinkling.